This morning, a shocking event shook the skies of West Africa. Air Burkina, the pride of Burkina Faso's aviation, faced one of its darkest hours. A dangerous attack unfolded on one of its planes mid-flight. Panic spread through the cabin as passengers screamed in terror. The world would soon realize this was no ordinary tragedy. Among the chaos, one man stood at the center of hope: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Known as the defender of his nation, he was suddenly faced with a fight in the sky. The plane had just taken off from Ouagadougou. Families, businessmen, and children were aboard. What began as a normal flight soon turned into a nightmare. Reports say armed attackers had infiltrated the plane, smuggled weapons, slipped past security in the dead of night. Their mission was deadly and precise. They wanted to send a message to the entire African continent. The target wasn't just Air Burkina. The real target was national pride, security, and the Burkinabe people. As the plane climbed into the sky, the attackers made their move. Shots rang out inside the cabin. Screams echoed across the aisles. Flight attendants fell to the ground in fear. Within minutes, terror consumed the atmosphere. Some passengers fainted from shock. Others clutched their children, praying desperately. The attackers moved towards the cockpit. Their goal was clear: take control of the plane. Suddenly, one of them shouted, "This plane belongs to us now!" But fate had placed a soldier on board. Ibrahim Traoré was not supposed to be there. He had boarded quietly, without fanfare. He was on his way to a confidential meeting. No one knew the Burkinabe captain was among them. As bullets tore through the air, Traoré stood up. His eyes locked onto the attackers. His heart pounded, but his spirit was unshaken. The passengers looked at him, desperate for a savior. He whispered, "Stay calm. I will protect you." Courage filled the cabin. One man against armed attackers. Impossible, they thought. But Traoré had faced worse in the deserts of Burkina Faso. He knew the cost of freedom. Slowly, he advanced toward the nearest attacker. The man aimed his weapon directly at him. "Sit down or you die," the attacker roared. Traoré didn't flinch. With lightning speed, he grabbed a metal food tray. In one swift strike, he disarmed the attacker. The cabin erupted in shock. Passengers gasped. Hope had returned. But there were more attackers. They charged forward with rage. Bullets shattered windows. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. The plane shook violently. Chaos turned into sheer panic. Traoré ducked, rolled, and fought back. His training as a soldier guided every move. He fought with bare hands against loaded guns. Blood spilled, but he pressed on. The survival of everyone on board depended on him. "Burkina Faso will never kneel," he shouted. His voice inspired courage. Some passengers began to resist. A young man tackled an attacker from behind. A mother shielded her baby while throwing a water bottle at another. The entire cabin was no longer silent prey. It was a battlefield. Traoré's fists moved like steel. One attacker was knocked unconscious. Another dropped his weapon in fear. But the leader of the attackers remained. He pressed a gun to the pilot's head. "Turn this plane around or we all die," he screamed. The pilot's hands shook on the controls. The altitude dropped suddenly. Oxygen was running low. Traoré's eyes fixed on the leader. He knew one wrong move could kill them all. Every second felt like eternity. The passengers held their breath. Silence filled the cabin. Then, with the strength of a lion, Traoré advanced. He leapt toward the cockpit. The attacker fired. The bullet grazed Traoré's arm. Pain seared through his body, but he did not stop. With a powerful blow, he disarmed the leader. The guns slid across the floor. The cabin exploded in cheers. The fight was over. Traoré had saved them all. The pilot regained control of the plane. He steadied the altitude, guiding the aircraft safely. The passengers cried tears of relief. Children hugged their mothers tightly. Old men bowed their heads in gratitude. The cabin crew returned, shaken but alive. And in the center of it all stood Ibrahim Traoré. His uniform was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes burned with victory. Burkina Faso had not been broken. When the plane finally landed, the world was waiting. News spread like wildfire. Attack on air! Burkina stopped by Captain Traoré! Headlines lit up across Africa and beyond. International media swarmed the runway. Survivors stepped out, telling the world what they had witnessed. He fought with his bare hands, one said. He risked his life for us, another cried. The story of courage spread across nations. Traoré became more than a leader. He was a guardian in the sky. Governments condemned the attack. Intelligence agencies scrambled to find the masterminds. Who had dared to strike Air Burkina? Who wanted to destabilize the country? Whispers of foreign interference filled the air. Fingers pointed towards groups opposed to Traoré's rise. They knew his leadership threatened their interests, but their plan had failed. Burkina Faso had proved its resilience. The enemy's message was silenced. Survivors described the attack as hell in the sky. Mothers still wept when recalling the screams of children. Fathers spoke of praying as bullets tore through the air. But every story ended the same. Ibrahim Traoré saved them, not with advanced weapons, not with an army, but with courage and unshakable will. His bare hands became the shield of his people. His presence turned tragedy into survival. The United Nations called for investigations. World leaders praised Traoré's bravery. African nations rallied in solidarity. Messages of support poured in. You are not alone, Burkina Faso. We stand with you. Yet in the shadows, enemies plotted again. They had failed once, but they would try again. Traoré knew this was not the end. The war for independence was far from over. That night, in the quiet of his home, Traoré sat in silence. His arm was bandaged, his uniform stained with blood, but his spirit remained unbroken. He thought of the children on the plane, the innocent lives that had looked to him for safety. He promised himself, never again would his people be defenseless. Never again would fear control their skies. Burkina Faso would rise stronger. Across the nation, people lit candles in prayer, churches and mosques filled with voices of gratitude. The nation stood united. The attack meant to divide them had only strengthened their bond. From villages to cities, his name was praised. Traoré, the protector of the skies. Children drew pictures of him as a hero. Elders spoke of him as a blessing. His legacy grew beyond politics. He became a symbol of survival. International forces scrambled to explain the breach. How had armed men smuggled weapons aboard? Who had funded them? Who had trained them? The truth was buried deep in political games. But one truth stood tall. Traoré's courage had rewritten the story. Instead of a nation mourning, it was a nation celebrating. Instead of a tragedy, it became a tale of triumph. Instead of death, there was life. Survivors described him as more than human. He fought like a storm, one said. He never gave up, even when bleeding. The people believed destiny had placed him there. He was meant to be their shield. He was meant to stand against the impossible. And he had done just that. Burkina Faso would never forget this day. The day the skies were saved. The day Ibrahim Traoré stood alone against terror. Journalists wrote endless articles. Documentaries began filming. Songs were written in his honor. The world finally saw Burkina Faso not as a victim, but as a land of heroes. The attack meant to humiliate had backfired. It only lifted Traoré higher in the eyes of his people. He had given them something priceless, hope. Hope that even in the darkest skies, light could prevail. Hope that Burkina Faso would rise above enemies. The story will live forever in African history. A morning that began with screams ended with triumph. A plane that could have been a grave became a symbol of survival. A leader who could have remained silent chose to fight. One man's courage saved hundreds of lives. One man's sacrifice inspired millions. This was not just a story of survival. This was a story of destiny. The world will never forget the day Ibrahim Traoré fought in the sky and turned tragedy into victory.